Hi, all. Thanks so much for watching Making Venture Work for You, bringing together the stars of medicine, academia, and venture. I'm Stephanie Fields. I am a patient and family advocate, as well as a philanthropy expert and co-founder of Making Healthcare Work for You and co-producer of this series. And today we are really excited to bring Scott Becker, founder of Beckers Healthcare, longtime partner with McGuire Woods. He's a healthcare investor, a Harvard law grad, and also a CPA. And then we are bringing Sherry Duville, CEO of Metagram, chair of the Trustworthy Technology and Innovation Consortium, the TTIC for short, series editor for Taylor and Francis. She's edited and co-authored a series of books that have defined the field of healthcare IT, and she is also co-chair of the trust for IEEE 2933. And finally, Dr. Apoorv Gupta, who is a vice president at Premier, co-chair of the TTIC, and co-founder, co-host of Making Healthcare Work for You with me. And so we are just so excited to talk to you, Scott. And Sherry actually reminded us in the pre-interview that it was a newsletter of yours that actually led to this particular series about venture and the one that we do about AI, because we got Becker's healthcare newsletter, and one of them was the top trends that healthcare leaders needed to know about AI. And so I was like, oh my gosh, who knows healthcare AI better than Sherry? We should talk to her. So here we are, and we are excited to have this full circle moment with you. And so sticking with that first topic, there's so much to talk about with you, but we're going to stick with the first topic of the TTIC, which is all about ethics and patient safety. And so where some organizations or some people might think about AI and healthcare technology with theoretical frameworks or marking a checkbox, but they're working in silos, not actually working on things that are having real world proof or impacts. See, the TTIC focuses on the practical, actionable solutions rooted in the clinical integration and based on real world evidence. So they want to ensure that the technology directly improves patient care and operationalizes the workflows, aligning the technical, operational, clinical, and risk management, bridging those gaps. And so through that incredible work and foundation, Sherry has been able to bring together leaders like Chuck Podesta, the industry leading CIO, and TTIC executive sponsor, Ed Gadet, CEO of Cessanet, Mitch Parker, CISO at IU Health, Apoorv, who's here with us today, you, who were incredible. All of these people are now in this universe. So when you're thinking about what you're investing in as a healthcare investor, and you've mentioned that you do various types of investing, what are those things? Do you take those companies that are thinking of these things in a TTIC way about, okay, what is ethical, what is safe, what is really going to make a difference in the clinical environment, and do those hold a higher weight? How do you approach that? Because there are so many things that you have to consider when you're looking at what kind of technology or AI to invest in.
100%. So I think it's a great question. I think the TTIC is a magnificent resource for those that are involved with it, for just allowing us to think through different issues, to think about different issues, and so forth. Now, when you ask me about how I invest, I'll take you from a different steps of that, because the reality of how I invest in stuff is I invest with, my intention is always to invest with people who are much smarter investors than myself, and to sort of really to springboard off of them. And so I invest with people and investors, and probably secondarily do I invest around specific theses, like I want to be in digital health, I want to be in this, or I want to be that. I'm in digital health, I'm in life sciences a lot, but not necessarily by my direct choice that that's the right place to be, but by my choice that I want to be with these investors that are really good at what they do, and touch the right stuff. And so I look at it more as, am I investing with great investors, great funds, great thinkers? And then some of it is, there's a part of it that's also very seed stage that we might be investing with, because we're trying to stay part of an investing group and network that otherwise we might not do so, but allows me to stay in touch with some really fascinating, brilliant entrepreneurs and investors and other people. And so it's a bit of a mix, I would say.
Wow. I love that answer, Scott, and it's very different than what I might have anticipated. So it's very illuminating to hear that this is kind of what drives you in terms of the people and the investing with the smarter people and the ability to develop a network and just be able to get in on specific deals. Maybe I'll ask that question again from my vantage point. I suspect your answer might still be something similar, but I'll say for the world, a lot of the world really knows you through Becker's Healthcare, and because that's publicly available, daily delivered to our door. So many amazing conferences that Becker's creates, and you're really an industry gold standard for cutting edge information and convening. So that's the way in which I know you as a consultant, as a physician, and as a healthcare leader. I guess my question coming back to that is, we look at those sources so that we can understand what's going on in the industry. What's the trends? What are the driving trends? What are people doing? What are other health systems and other people doing? So that we as consultants particularly can help our clients get a leg up and a better understanding of what they need to do. Does any of that world drive your thinking in terms of what to invest in?
Sure. So what's fascinating is it's a great question. So, when we put together Becker's Healthcare a long time ago, right, our concept was very much to move towards short, clarity, concise journalism, short form journalism, where people could do exactly what you're doing, which is get their hands around a subject. But we intended very much not to be sort of the deepest dive into things. We used to write pieces that were these long strategic pieces. And what I find is that no one would read them, because what they were really interested in doing was getting a quick snapshot of here's what's going on, here are where things are at, here's what's happening. I tell you, so does it inform my investing? A little bit and not so much. Like I'll tell you, so for example, I'm invested by chance through some different entrepreneurs and some different funds in a handful of different AI companies. And the thing that's fascinating about the AI companies is this is going to be, there's going to be a handful that really become very serious, big, serious companies. And there's going to be a lot that either die in the vine or get swallowed up because, like all things, entrepreneurs and software engineers are often really good at developing point solutions. But the problem is the world is moving away from point solutions because if you're a large system, you can't work with 2,000 different point solutions. So you've ended up, and the venture people understood this far before I did, because I was always a best in class point solution person. But the venture people a long time ago started moving towards we can't do that because we can't get scale out of just point solutions. So the great challenge is there's so many, like if you go back to the old George Bush first phrase, so many points of light, there are so many thousands of points of light that I found myself over time investing a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here in all these different companies. With the reality of as I've grown and my understanding is some of these will thrive, some of these won't, but they can't thrive by having two hospital customers. They've got to have big customers and they've got to have big purposes with those customers. So when I look at some of these companies, one that I'm not an investor in, like Dr. Rao and a Bridge has done a wonderful job of being deep with health systems. And that's where you want to be, is you need to be deep and not just a point. And I think more and more the world's going to move towards that. And so I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but what happens is I watch this. If you invest in venture, I invest in venture, invest in private equity, and then the core of my portfolio is in index funds, treasuries, and relatively safe stuff. You never really understand things. I'm a lawyer and an advisor by background, then obviously built a media company. But you never really understand a lot of things until you've been hit in the nose with it. For example, if you're an investor, early on in my career, a long time ago, I was on the board of directors of a very successful company. I had some small amount of stock in it, but I had not understood the term, even though as a lawyer, what a waterfall was. If you're an investor, you never understand what a waterfall means until you're on the wrong side of a waterfall. And what a waterfall means is, the core investors are getting their money back first, plus interest, plus this, plus that. And you, as the other side of the waterfall, are getting money in after the stock hits a certain plateau. So you think that your investment is worth this, and it was really, for all practical purposes, a grant to me versus a true investment. So I'm thankful every moment for it and the experience. But what I learned was the hard knocks world, that my investment that came after the waterfall was worth a fraction of what I thought it was going to be worth. I mean, there's so many of these things you don't understand until you've dipped some toes in the water and had a chance to experience them, not necessarily as an advisor, but actually as a principal or as an investor. I mean, obviously I did not grow up with money, made some money. Most of my investments are in treasuries and in index funds, but then I've got a handful of things in individual private equity and venture capital funds. And there's a ton of studies in this, that the private equity funds have outperformed the S&Ps by 1 to 2% on average. It's not a huge amount, and you give up a lot of liquidity to get that 1 to 2 extra percent, because the private equity ones are not liquid investments. So you learn so much, because what happens is, if you grew up like I grew up, the sort of the golden ring was be able to invest in some of these funds, to be able to, like, oh my God, I'm a player now, I'm an investor in this private equity, this fund. And what happens is, some of them that you don't expect end up being very successful. Some of them that you would have thought, oh my God, I finally have arrived, I'm an investor in this or that or that. And what happens is, it's almost more fun to talk about being an investor in them than actually seeing what it's done for my bank account, which is not that much.
So
And I
the benefit of not that you've had other kinds of benefits, but that they haven't necessarily materialized in the way that you would imagine financially. You have so much great perspective, Scott, and you've been doing it for a while. I know you advise companies to various stages, and I frequently ask you for advice, and I'll continue doing that if it's okay with you. But what one thing that would really help is using all the experience and learnings. If you were going to start over again in terms of trying to understand healthcare investing, especially at the early stage, what do you wish you had known that you didn't know, like when you started? Maybe was that 10 or 15 years ago?
Yeah, so I started investing. The first real investments I did were a long time ago, side by side with management companies that were in the surgery center space. And this was back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, where I was an investor in, a whole number of individual pieces of surgery centers or small physician-owned hospitals. And it was truly a fascinating learning experience. And the lesson that I had then, that I still have today, is there's two or three lessons. The biggest lesson I take away is that the first thing is, you're going to try and always invest with people that you fully trust, that you're very confident in. That's the number one piece of advice that I take away, that you know deeply, you're confident. You try and also invest, and I was better at this when I was younger, in investing in things that you totally understand. So at one time, the surgery center business was a very easy business to understand. You knew if you had this amount of cases, this amount of doctors, it was easy to be a part of and terrific. And I knew I was investing with these management companies. Their track record was fantastic. I was owning very small parts of it. The second thing is, invest with people that you really trust, invest in areas that you really understand, ideally. And then the third part of this is, when you invest with somebody, don't get excited about the second, third, fourth investment or fifth investment with them until you've had some chance to see the track record of your investments with them. And so at one point early on in my career, invested when a really close colleague went to work with some people in real estate investing, did some real estate investing with them. And the only smart thing I did was not make a second, third, or fourth investment with them, because the first investment ended up being a debacle, as an example. But it's very easy to get pulled along. And then the fourth thing I think about, I always live in what I call the core and explore world, where the core of my investing is index funds and treasuries. And it is amazing to me how many really smart investors, who have been highly successful, understand that it's very hard to individually pick stocks, and that index funds are a win for most of us. I mean, Warren Buffett famously says, if you're not really living in the world of investing full time, you ought to be an index investor. So we're a believer in this core and explore concept, where the core of my portfolio is index funds and treasuries. Then I've got different pieces of it with a couple venture capital funds and a series of private equity funds. And I find it fascinating, because I never know which fund is going to be making returns and not. And it's a learning experience over time. And the continuum out there of private equity fund investing is very broad. There's some of it that goes correlative to what year you got into funds. Was it a good year for funds generally? But it's not like the average returns are a point to two better than those of the index funds, but it's not uniform. So it might be fantastic for these three funds, horrible for these four funds. So it's not, you have to have enough exposure with what you trust. And I really view it as exploratory type of investing versus the core, because you just don't know if your funds are going to do great or not great with that vintage fund and when you invest with them and all those kinds of things.
Thank you for that. I mean, each and every part of what you're saying is amazing. And I love the symbolism of what you had said earlier about the 1,000 points of light, because it's literally coming through your window right now. And we can see, like you're animated and you've got all these great insights, and they're all coming through on each ray of light. But kind of related to another point that you had made, you talked about how a lot of entrepreneurs are really good at coming up with point solutions. And we struggled with that a little bit, especially from the TTIC perspective, because we see that a lot of these companies are not really designed to help enterprises, the healthcare system, effectively address the challenges that they're facing, because these point solutions are, as you said, they're too small, they're not connected. And also they're really not taking into account some of the critical concerns related to privacy and security and trust that are really necessary. So I wonder if you could maybe take a few minutes just to help us address what are some of the effective solutions that you might be seeing out there, or the effective ways in which entrepreneurs can be building towards designing true enterprise level solutions.
I think it's a great and very complicated question. So point solutions traditionally were often better than the enterprise solution at the specific thing that they were doing. So I don't want to take anything away from point solutions. As long as the point solutions are so good and so great, and they do integrate well, they do all those kinds of things well. You just have a challenge of a customer saturation standpoint of a customer or a system to only work with so many point solutions. They can only process in their own workflow so many different point solutions. But people want to cut that for a lot of reasons you're talking about: security reasons, cyber reasons. You're hoping that the bigger companies have more depth in their security. It's not always the case, of course, as we have found out and seen. But the hope is that they've got more depth. They've also got more depth to constantly improve. And the one thing that I've learned about software investing and venture investing is, two lessons. You're always improving. One of the reasons why Apple is so successful is it's always improving. And if you're not committed to always improving, you can't do it. The other thing I've learned about venture and software investing is you better be prepared as an investor. You better not shoot too much on your first round, because there's going to be many other rounds as well. And if you don't want to be diluted so much, you better be careful on how much you put up front, because you're going to have to follow on with it too. And it's a long time frame for these things to get into big customers, and become not just growth, but at some point profitable companies, or at some point, commercial enterprises, really commercial enterprises at a serious level.
Thank you so much. This was incredible. The time went way too fast, but you really gave us so many different ways to think about this, from all the different areas of investing that you can do and how to think about it. And love hearing that you are interested in it being secure technologies that are ethical and really going to drive true innovation in healthcare. So I love the way you're thinking about that. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciated this and gave us all something to learn from.
Yeah.
Thank you folks so much for having me. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.